We see a lot of mistakes when people are trying to fast, and today I'm going to go through the top 5 mistakes we see at thefastingmethod.com and what to do about them. And it's coming right up. Mistake number 1, overeating. When people are fasting, they're not eating anything, so it's really not possible to overeat or choose the wrong foods. However, what happens is that people feel that when they're eating again, because they haven't eaten for a period of time, they can eat whatever foods they want and however amount because of the period of fasting that they had before that. And that's a mistake. Remember that when you're fasting, your body is going to use some of the stores of calories. That is the body fat or the blood sugar. If you then eat foods that you know are bad for you, if you're eating a lot of junk food, for example, potato chips, things you know are going to make you gain weight, well, you're simply going to put more of those calories back into storage. If your insulin is going to go up, your body's going to want to store those calories. So while you're getting the benefit of the fasting ahead of time, you're losing a lot of that benefit. And indeed, you may even completely negate the benefits of the fast that you had ahead of you. When you're fasting, you're using energy so that you're taking the calories that you normally would have eaten and you're taking the energy from your stores, which is your body fat. Overeating is sort of natural. I mean, we've all done it. It's a mistake we often make. And some people can get a little bit of a stomach ache if they eat too much after a fast, which tells you you're sort of on the wrong track. Remember that after you've eaten, you need to forget that you've fasted. Remember that after you've done a fast, forget about it. Pretend like it never happened, because then you want to eat as normally as possible. So if you don't eat for 16 hours, for example, you dropped breakfast, don't eat more at lunch afterwards. You want to eat the same amount as you normally would, and the energy that you would have taken at breakfast, say 500 calories you normally take at breakfast, you should have taken that 500 calories out of your body fat, and therefore your lunch should stay the same and your dinner should stay the same. Sometimes it won't. Sometimes you will feel a little bit hungrier than usual. And here's a little tip. Try going a little bit over the 24 hours if that's what you're used to, and making sure that you go through the nighttime. When you go through the nighttime, what happens is that as you sleep, which is your normal fasting period, your body's going to be taking the energy it needs out of its storage, and it's going to replenish whatever you had. And then when you wake up in the morning, it's almost like your body has reset itself. And that's one way to deal with the problem of overeating after a fasting period. Remember, just forget about it, pretend like it never happened, and you'll be on your way to success. Mistake number 2, eating the wrong diet. Fasting is about the period of time that you're not eating. So it tells you nothing about what diet to follow, but some diets are easier to fast than others. And the reason is that your body really has 2 different types of triggers for fuel. You can use sugar and you can use fat. When you're eating normally, you can burn sugar mostly, and when there's no sugar, you can burn fat. When you're burning body fat, it's the same as if it's burning dietary fat. So there's no change. If you're eating a diet which is very low in carbohydrates, such as a ketogenic diet or a low carbohydrate diet, for example, your body is now already used to using fat as a fuel. So therefore, when you're switching from using the dietary fat to body fat because you're fasting, there's barely any change. Your body doesn't even notice it. However, if you're eating a very high carbohydrate diet, lots of bread and rice and so on, your body is used to using sugar. Now, as you fast, you're asking it to switch completely from using sugar to using fat. And it doesn't really know what to do, so that transition is much more difficult. If you're eating a lot of processed foods, you're not getting a lot of satiety as well. Remember that foods contain natural satiety signals. That is, when you eat food, you cannot keep eating that food infinitely. your body eventually gets full. And the reason it feels full is because it releases hormones to tell you you're full. If you're eating a lot of protein, for example, it's going to release peptide YY, which is a satiety signal. It tells your body to stop eating. Same thing with fat. It will release cholecystokinin, tells your body stop eating. If you're eating a lot of unrefined foods with a lot of fiber, it's very bulky, for example, then you're going to activate stretch receptors in the stomach, and those will tell you to stop eating. If you're eating highly refined, highly processed foods, you're not going to have those satiety signals, and therefore you're going to have a problem because you're going to be hungry earlier, which is going to make it harder for you if you're trying to stretch the period in between your fasting. So keep in mind that some diets pair with intermittent fasting a lot better. The key thing to keep in mind is highly unrefined and also lower in carbohydrates and more towards proteins and fats, because they will keep you more full and make it easier for that transition towards fasting because you're using now body fat. Mistake number 3, doing it alone. This is actually true for almost everything. If you're doing anything, working out or hobbies or education, trying to learn something, it's almost always easier when you do it with somebody. And it's the same with fasting. This is the secret to how entire communities, sometimes millions of people, could fast all together because they're doing it with their family, they're doing it with their friends. So for religious purposes, for example, you may have periods of time where fasting is the norm. Is it fun? Not really, but is it doable? Yes. Literally millions of people around the world observe periods of fasting at the same time, and they will help each other doing it. Mistake number 4, triggers. We eat for more than hunger. There's lots of reasons. Food is delicious, so we want to eat. There's a social aspect to eating. That is, we get together to eat. It could be part of your job. Perhaps if you're a chef, for example, we eat to celebrate. So therefore, by understanding those triggers, you can make it easier for yourself to do the fasting. If you're an emotional eater, you can think of something else that you can do when you're sad, for example. So instead of eating, you might say, I'm going to just go for a long walk, or I'm going to go take a bath. I'm going to go buy some flowers. Whatever it is that you feel that may help you with that emotional side of things, instead of going for the food, go for something else. But the only way you can understand why the fasting is difficult is for you to understand what the trigger is. In some cases, hunger will in fact be the trigger for us to eat. And there are ways to deal with that. You might check out my video on how to deal with hunger during fasting. But remember, there's so many other triggers to fasting that we also want to make sure that we cover all of those. And the 5th mistake that we see is get out of the kitchen. This is difficult. Sometimes during the pandemic, for example, people working at home, there wasn't a lot of room. They'd set up their computer in the kitchen. And that's difficult because therefore, all around you, you have all kinds of temptations. Things are in your face. You can see your pantry. You can see the refrigerator, everything. That's just asking for trouble because there's always a strong association with food. So make sure you get out of the kitchen. And that's just setting up your environment for success. So it's not about willpower. It's about making sure that you have the proper environment that's going to allow you to succeed. Because if you didn't see the pantry and its snacks, you wouldn't have been tempted to go after them and break your fast. So those are the 5 big mistakes that we see during fasting. 1, overeating. 2, the wrong diet. Number 3, trying to do it alone. Number 4, looking for triggers such as emotions. And number 5, get out of the kitchen. Thanks very much. I'll see you next week.